Lowriders tend to mean customized classic cars with spectacular candy or flaked paint jobs, lowered to the point of scraping against the pavement, sometimes Frankenstein by a hydraulic system that gives the car a little pep in the step, a little bounce in the house. But growing up...
little junk in the trunk.
Little junk in the trunk. But growing up, for me, lowriders and classic cars and custom cars and hot rods and movie cars all fell under the umbrella of cool cars.
Right. It is.
Yeah, something you'd see at a car show at a park or a cruise night or a Pomona swap meet or the Paso Robles car show or Bob's Big Boy on Friday nights.
Right. Or Jay Leno's garage.
Or Jay Leno's garage. Yeah, when I thought it was actually Conan.
Conan's on after.
Yeah.
Conan's
got the car.
Conan's outhouse is after Jay Leno's garage. Yeah, as much as I proclaim I do not care about cars, I love a car or like any fair or something. Or a parade where when they have lowriders, I love it. I love seeing all these cars.
As a kid, like it was funny because my dad, my brother, a lot of my uncles are all car guys. They would, take us all to car shows. And I'd be like, I don't care. I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know why I start going gaga. And then I would see 60s Batmobile there. And I'd be like, oh my God, the 60s Batmobile is right in front of me. And which is a beautiful car.
But you also, like with the lowrider stuff, you don't have to know any. Like it just,
it just looks good.
It looks objectively cool.
It looks, you're right. Objectively cool. And you see so many elements amongst, like, you can see 5 cars. They all have similar things, but each one does something differently. And they pronounce themselves differently. It's really cool. I'm going to go over some information you talked about already, but Los Angeles is a perfect candidate for the birthplace of the lowrider and the concept of the cool car, because we are the car capital of the world, for better or worse. And I've said many times before, but the 1920s.
Come on, think of Jakarta.
Come on. The 1920s is when Los Angeles became a major modern city. And to accommodate the growing number of residents in a city that is already incredibly spread out by the point, Angelinos of the 20s needed cars to get around. And you were saying Henry Ford started selling his Model Ts here in Southern California as early as 1908. And over the next 20 years, he sold, like you said, 17 million Model Ts worldwide with no plans on stopping. Here in the city during the 20s, the numbers of cars...
Unless the Jews had something to say about it.
My buddy Charles Lindbergh and I have a couple crazy ideas. Here in the city during the 20s, the number of cars quadrupled between 1914 and 1922. We had a rate of 1 car for every 2.25 people compared to the rest of the country, which was 1 for every 7.
Could you, like, I'm sure the traffic was bad, but like by our standards, not that bad. But imagine like going from like, 70,000 cars here to 5 years later, there's like 800,000. Like, imagine the frustration of like, it used to take me 4 minutes to get here.
Just trying to cross the street, like crossing the street safely rose in danger significantly over a 5-year period. Yeah, by
you
the
better
day.
Cross by 3 p.m. or else it's going to be 80% more deadly.
When the sun comes down, it's legal to run you over.
They might think you're a horse, and that's not good.
Because they're going to send you to the glue factory. When I say the 20s is when we became a real city, part of that is because it was a decade where the car took over public transportation as the common man's way of getting around. By the 1920s, there was plenty of used up Model A's and Model T's sitting around that the average guy was able to afford one.
Right.
But they were being modified.
Which were already becoming affordable and affordable by
like
the day.
Like you were saying. But they were being modified for speed, dropping excess car parts to drop in weight and adding engines with more power to boost the speed. And thus hot rodding was born in...
Say the year? Were you about to say the year?
No, I don't know the exact
But you're talking
year.
About like the 20s.
It is the 20s. I want to say it's the mid to late 20s is when hot rodding
That's crazy.
drops. And I don't know, I guess because they were learning more and more. With every year, they were learning more about cars and how to modify them. So they're like, it goes 20 miles per hour. Well, what if we put a bigger engine? Okay, well, it's going to be slow because it's heavy. Okay, well, we drop the weight then. We drop the back seat. We drop the
Get rid
bumpers.
of the airbags,
yeah,
which exist.
Get rid of the windshield. We don't need it.
But
I just won't swallow bugs.
I'll keep my mouth closed.
Yeah.
I'll put on those silly goggles.
Yeah.
But it's crazy that like within like 10 years of them being around, like, how can we make this more deadly?
Yeah. I hit someone with my car and they survived. How can I change that? Yeah. So in the 20s, hot rodding was in its infancy, but over the next 2 decades, it would really flourish and become everything that we know hot rodding to be. When the street
Lightning McQueen.
Yeah. So when street races became illegal because of all the property damage and deaths, they were moved to abandoned airfields, and drag racing was born in the early 50s. But that's looking too far ahead. The Depression slows down the whole country, which included hot rodders, but it doesn't stop completely.
Well, you get rid of the economy, then you can go faster.
Yeah. Drop the economy, add more war.
Increase military spending.
Racers would hit dry, barren lake beds northeast of LA. World War II and Rosy River pick everything back up, standing on the tall shoulders of countless deaths. So when the boys come back home and production on cars picked back up, things had changed.
Which I'll talk about.
First off, there was a demand for new cars. And with that, suddenly there was an influx of used cars being sold. Soldiers coming back from the war had the GI Bill to help support them, but working class people still struggled to find work once they were back home. So these new cars were perfect for them, because they had money coming in that they were making from the GI Bill.
What can I waste this on?
Yeah, exactly. I need a car. What can I waste this on? Oh, I have some money coming in, and all these used cars are for sale. This was true for the Latinos and Black people of LA who were buying older models of cars, and now some even had a skill set in repairing and modifying machinery thanks to their time in the military, and had a penchant for either be speed demons as a way to cope with PTSD, like the Hells Angels, or to showcase a flair for creativity after years of uniformity in the military, and thus the seeds of the lowrider scene were being planted. When it comes to talking about lowriders and Latinos,
I don't have to say yes, sir, anymore.
I'm going to paint my car green.
I'm going to put Tweety Bird on this car.
And nobody can stop me.
Not even Hitler.
Yeah. When it comes to talking about lowriders and Latino culture, it sounds very similar to what we had to say about Pachucos and Zoot Suit style. Like young Latinos and Black people wanted to put their own flair and personal creativity on popular American items, separating them from not only mass-produced products, but also the white American crowd the Studebakers of the world. Yeah. Like white people would want to participate. I'm
going to say like a joke from the 80s.
White people, when they put on a coat, they wear it like this. Like they want the same things that white Americans did, but they want to put a little spin on everything because we want to make sure everyone knows we're not white and we don't like white people.
I know you treat me like a white person, completely the same and equal, but I'm different.
Yeah, I'm here to tell you that I'm different. I know you couldn't tell.
I know you're not thinking it whenever you look at me.
I know you're following me around this store for different reasons. In return, people of color managed to resist and still participate in American youth culture. And just like Zoot Suits would take on cultural and political identity, so would lowriders, as it became symbols for not only Mexican-American youth, but a shorthand for Los Angeles. If you see a lowrider, you kind of think Los Angeles. You see palm trees.
You do. I see one right now. But so you mentioned Black people. What are those? You mentioned that because, it was like Latino and Black.
Yeah.
So Black people were doing lowriders too, because you don't really see that.
You don't really see that. I think it was predominantly Latinos, but Black people were also very into lowriders.
Because when you go... I guess I never, because when I see, when we were famously driving through a lowrider parade in my Honda Civic, and every time I see lowrider things, it's more Latinos.
It's predominantly, I want to say, but there's also like, it's strange because I don't like to generalize.
Oh, I do.
But like there almost is like a dividing line in between like the classic car guy, which is like usually like an older white dude,
Jay Leno,
and like guys who are into lowriders. But
George Lopez.
To me, it's sort of equal parts because like in the 90s, I'll get to it a little bit, but like in the 90s, you see more lowriders in rap and hip hop videos.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So like it's part of like LA culture. And it's part of the cool LA culture.
I guess you're right.
No, they're there too, and they've sort of always been there, or at least from like the 50s, 60s on.
Okay,
were part of the culture.
But yeah,
too.
I guess you're right. Like maybe, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I know I'm right. Now, all this to say, after the war, things changed, as did car culture. Now everybody had a car. It was part of everyone's daily routine. Thus, speed was no longer what young car guys were after because you're driving to work, you're driving to the market or the ball game, or you have a dumb family and everyone's on the road with you. Racing and speed were saved for the hobbyists and the nut job speed demons. What was now
or the 134.
No one's around. No one's even checking up.
If I hit something, I'll just fly onto this sign.
Now what was in was creativity. How can you spruce up your ride so it stands out?
Okay.
While most hot rods during the Depression were Fords because of availability and adaptability, most lowriders were Chevys, which were in surplus and they were easy to modify.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Side note, for some reason, I don't know why. I meant to look it up, but I'm sure a lot of people know why. The Chevy Impala was an institution in the lowrider community. I think it was, I don't really know why. Like all Chevys
sounds cool.
It does sound cool. I don't know if it was just easier to modify or if it just looked cooler. Because I think all Chevys were sort of easy to play around with. Okay, so lowriders in general, they would lower the rear of the car's frame to get it low to the ground and pack the trunk full of sandbags to ensure it would stay low.
That's fun. So there is junk in the trunk.
There's junk in the trunk. Eventually, that was changed with a more mechanical solution. They cut the springs and they gave the car wheels. They gave the car wheels that were smaller in diameter and had a lower profile, so you didn't see much of them.
See, this is what we were taught. Like, I would never, I'm going to cut this spring on the, like, I would never, ever want to know how to mess around with that because I would die immediately.
I think the early 2000s had a lot of car modification shows and motorcycle shows where they would just change a pimp on my ride.
Pimp on my ride.
But it is fascinating to see how people look at a car and they think we can change that.
Yeah.
And I never look at a car and think, how can I change? Like, oh, I want a smaller screen so it looks slower. I don't think that, but these guys are welders. They know how to fabricate objects from fiberglass.
It's like, I mean, we just don't care.
Yeah.
Like it's people. It's like people who are like, yeah, I'll listen to the 4 songs that are on the radio. I'm not gonna say that we know music that well. Let's see.
Don't lump me.
Yeah, I'll lump you in with this.
I know 2 songs.
I need something to eat. I'll go to Chili's. Like that's you. Like that's the equivalent of us with cars.
Yeah.
Like, I need a car. I'll get a Corolla.
Well, I mean, like, first of all, I never had the money to get a car I've wanted. So like that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I
Greg, you can't afford a Studebaker.
Greg, come on.
This is sad.
But also, like, I don't look at a car as something I could inform. I was watching the Rad Fink documentary about Big Daddy Roth, and he has a little segment of like, you take a classic car, and then like, well, I want a different windshield. I want the taillights to stick out like this. I want the bumper to like. I just don't look at a car and think, how can I play around and make it look the way I want it to look? It
doesn't even occur to me like I could change the color.
Yeah. Because I'm not creative at all.
I get cars that are just gray. I just get a gray car.
Something that's low profile so I could stalk people and they wouldn't know.
Something that when you're looking out your living room window at 4 a.m, you won't even notice it.
Talking about, again, to how they would modify cars, they get a wheel that was smaller in diameter. They had a lower profile. The ideal choice I read was like a 20-inch. I don't know how to even read tire measurements, preferably with the white ring on the tire known as a white wall. If you've seen old cars that have the white circular thing.
Biff's car.
Yeah, Biff's car. And covered with a baby moon hubcap that I always thought was called a chrome dome. It's not. It's called a baby moon hubcap. People with lowriders would get inventive trying to lower their ride to the ground. They'd cover the rear wheels with fender skirts. Sometimes they'd remove the post in between backseat and front seat windows so they could lower the roof and create a low, menacing, sleek look. You see a lot of Mercuries. They would spray them wild colors, sometimes bright with metal flakes that would sparkle in the sun, or they'd give it a candy coat that makes the color pop and shine. Sometimes it'd be dark matte color that would give it like a brooding look. They'd play around with the bumper and fender styles, swapping out car parts like taillights, headlights, rims. Every part of the car was replaceable, fixable, adjustable. The entirety of a lowrider and custom cars is about deconstruction. Ed Roth was great at this. Like I was saying, sometimes the car he would build wouldn't even function as a car. It was an art piece that had all the elements of a car modified and fabricated with love and creativity behind it, but it couldn't move an inch. It had to be towed into place.
The spruce goose.
The spruce goose of cars, yeah. Lowriders are really starting to become popular in Southern California in the late 40s, early 50s. Popular with the youth and most popular with Latino and Black youths. So obviously there was decided there had to be laws against this. Around this time is when hot rodders were banished to abandoned airfields to race, and low riding was starting to get attacked. By the mid to late 50s, a law was passed prohibiting any part of the vehicle to sit below the lowest part of the wheel rim, thus banning lowered cars.
It's What's the objection exactly to lowriders?
I don't know. Other than
are
you
white?
Damaging the street? Maybe is the only thing I could see them. But I think,
but they're not.
It's not really. Yeah,
I mean, maybe it scrapes a little bit, but like it's
not like forming potholes.
Yeah, it's not like driving with chains, like snow chains.
Yeah.
Like it's.
I think it's just like they're having too much fun doing this thing that's annoying us. So let's pass a law. Oh no! How will the lowrider subculture survive this? Well, thanks to a Long Beach custom car guy named Ron, I think it's Aguirre, lowriding was able to persist when he created the first hydraulic suspension for his car as an ex-Sonic bubble-top Corvette. Using mnemonic pumps, valves, and airbags hidden in the frame, the hydraulics could drop a car low and then pop it back up above the wheel rim when the cops pass by.
Okay, so you can hide your car.
How low it gets.
This is just a regular Chevy Impala.
No big deal.
Bum.
Before we started recording, did the sad piano version for the trailer of
the George Lopez story. Bum 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 bum.
So this was 1957, and it was followed shortly after by a 1959 Chevy Impala, the first Impala lowrider known as Buddha Buggy, a car restyled by Bill Hines for its owner, Tatsuko Tonda. I don't really know much about.
I don't know what you just said.
I was reading about car guys and tried to like follow it up, but they're really like, it was just mostly forums talking about people.
Jay Leno.
There were a lot of car guys who were getting famous in the world of custom cars, like Ron Aguirre, like Bill Gines, but also Jay Leno, but also guys like Al Sullivan, who had a shop in Orange County, which we're going to talk about. Carl Watson and Terry Anderson learned from him. Also coming around was the famous George Barris, who had a shop in the Valley at, I forget what street. It was on the same street as Bob's Big Boy, I think, which is what, Riverside?
Is that Riverside? No, is it Riverside or is that
Burbank? I don't know. It's one of those two.
I think it's Riverside.
He used to have a shop. It closed. But George Barris designed car. He was one of my favorite designers of cars. But he designed the '60s Batmobile. He designed Dragula and the Monster Coach from the Monsters and the Flintstones car for the movie, among many other actual cars.
Well, the work was all done for him.
He just had to build it.
The science was there.
He's a great car designer. Maybe it's just like a sleek look. Like Big Daddy Roth is very cartoony, like the car that Homer designs with a lot of bubble tops. But George Barris is an actual like, wow, that's a sleek, looks like a rocket.
Okay.
Or it looks like the '60s Batmobile.
Or it looks like a Munster mobile.
Yeah, it looks like the Munster mobile. There's
looks like a Munster would drive this.
Just a few well-known characters, but honestly, there's thousands of local neighborhood innovators and stylists in cars. Every scene has like their folk heroes, basically. In the '60s is when you get the big split in custom cars. It seemed like I was saying, like white dudes got into Jay Leno, like flamboyant, cartoony pop art, like Barris and Roth, and local scenes in the city kept to lowriders and classic cars as a tradition, trapping the lowrider scene kind of in amber, like hanging out for cruise nights on Whittier Boulevard, which is like sacred ground in lowrider lore, or Van Nuys Boulevard, or San Fernando Road in San Fernando, or Sepulveda. Like I said, Bob's Big Boy, the location in Whittier and in Burbank, had a long tradition of Friday cruise nights where classic cars and lowriders would descend to hang out and show off their cars. The whole scene thrives in the '60s and really hits its peak in everyone's memories, and it's sort of stuck there, even now, in my perspective anyways. Like if you go to a car show today or a cruise night, you're going to hear oldies from the '60s. Fashion styles tend to lean more towards '50s, '60s.
We've talked about this before, that the lowrider culture has the best taste in music.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% best.
Not even
music.
A question, except maybe just behind the Accordion Society.
Yeah, the polka pels. Yeah. Yeah. A car show, you're going to hear the best oldies. And it's the same 20 songs, but I want to hear them so bad.
Like I said, we have 4 songs.
We have 4 songs, yeah. And they're all, it's a very American Graffiti. Like it's very much what American Graffiti is trying to capture is the, here's 20 songs you're here. It's a warm summer night. Right. Everyone you know is out. Everyone's looking good.
And especially me when I'm there. But the Bob's Big Boy night is so much fun.
Yeah.
And they open up a special side window just to buy milkshakes. Yeah. So that you don't even have to go inside. Like you can just be out there in the parking lot with the cars and order a milkshake from this window.
Mal's Drive-In could never.
Mel's Drive-In should.
Mel's Drive-In should. They have a responsibility.
They have a responsibility. This is unethical for them to not do this.
And why don't they? And where's all the cars, Mel's Drive-In, who are trying to copy American Graffiti? It's up to Bob's Big Boy to do?
Yeah, you are American Graffiti.
Do better.
Bob wasn't there.
We believed in you. But as the decades move forward, the cars get less classic and more, in my opinion, kind of sleazy. In the '70s, vans with airbrush murals dominated, and classic cars pushed the hydraulic jump to its limits, popping a massive Chevy in the air for looks, fuzzy dice. Everything's got carpet in it. Lowrider culture started to seep into the mainstream in the '70s too. The band War puts out the hit Lowrider. The film Boulevard Nights is released.
It's actually called the George Lopez theme.
Just for everybody who wants to Google it. The Marilyn Monroe of lowriders, Gypsy Rose, which is a '64 Chevy Impala owned by Jesse Valadez, was seen in the episode of NBC's Chico and the Man. Gypsy Rose is currently part of the collection of the Peterson Automotive Museum. Lowrider Magazine, which means the scene's most source text, starts publishing thanks to 3 San Jose State students, Larry Gonzalez, Sony Madrid, and Danny Nunez. The Chicano rights movement, Whittier Boulevard, Lowrider Magazine, and the lowrider scene all get fused together, and each part sort of takes on this larger-than-life involvement in Los Angeles, like Mexican-American, Latino culture. Like wearing a zoot suit after the rights was seen as an act of resistance and pride, so does driving a lowrider at some point. It's sort of like, well, he's cool, and it's a political statement.
Yeah, but in the that's why people don't like it.
That's what it is. Yeah. But the '70s is also when gangs start to form, and car clubs get confused with gangs, and sometimes they are gangs, and sometimes they aren't, and it's all the same to LAPD. Some crew nights would it would turn violent because if rivals ran into each other, they would, pop off. In 1977, there was a ban on cruising that all but killed the Whittier Boulevard scene. 11 years later, in 1988, another cruising ban was put into place through the state. Now that lowriders had moved out of Southern California, through San Diego to San Francisco, out of state to Las Vegas, Phoenix, Portland, Dallas, Denver, Houston, Miami, and off continent. The lowrider custom car scene in Japan is one of the most strongest presences in all of subculture. That's weird.
That is very un-Japanese.
But you got to see it. It's so strong.
Like every time the car pops up, it apologizes.
Lowrider culture has persisted through the 90s because of, like I said, rap and hip hop, because the people who like Ice Cube, Eazy-E, and Snoop Dogg all found value and status in their cars, the creative looks and innovations, and all in the sense of rebellion that came in being seen in Lowrider. It meant something. It was a sleek old car that's been modified and fawned over. And it's not another like off the line Toyota Camry. It's a big, huge metal art piece that lets people know how cool I am.
Well, that's why when I strolled through the Lowrider parade in Elysian Park in my Honda Civic Hybrid, it really turned a few heads.
It really changed the game.
Yeah.
They didn't know that you could do that.
Yeah. That's why you see so many people driving Honda Civic Hybrids now.
They didn't know that you can accidentally drive into
they didn't know
Lowrider parade.
They didn't know that the street was not blocked. So from now on, they block it.
They block it.
It changed the game.
And nobody's going to Bodegons anymore because Bodegons is not there. The scene is stronger than ever, obviously. So strong that this year, 2024, Gavin Newsom passed a law prohibiting cities and local governments from passing anti-cruising ordinances that would ban lowriders from driving on public streets. Let my people go.
And during Passover of all times.
Yeah, let my people go.
Let my lowride jump.